All right. Good evening, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon from wherever you're joining us this evening. I want to especially welcome you to this series of seminar called the On Purpose series. My name is Ugochukwu Umelkeke. I function as the country support manager for Social Capital Impact Group. It's a pleasure to be here this evening and to take you along the line of this journey of developmental conversation this evening. We would commence immediately so that we can keep with time. I want to especially appreciate our speakers who are here before time. I also want to quickly say, because I know that we'll be expecting to see three speakers. Fortunately, one has to drop off because of some unavoidable circumstances. But this evening, we have two of our guests here, and I will be introducing them during the course of the meeting. But to start to kick off this evening, let me tell you a little bit about our organization, and what we are about this evening. Social Capital Impact Group is a global developmental management organization. Our forte is in strengthening institutions, transforming social systems, and of course, empowering local entities so that they own their own development to ensure more competitive and inclusive growth. That's where we do what we do in Social Capital Impact Group. We do program management, we provide technical assistance, we implement, support implementation of projects, and also we carry out research, development research, organizational research as the case would be. We have one of our research products is Profits with Purpose Africa. In the world today, where we are faced with a lot of developmental challenges that required immediate action, there is need to drive meaningful social change among the plethora of development issues or economic issues as the case will be. And over the years, philanthropy has been the response to some of this social change that we need to combat. We've also have organizations, chime in through their corporate social responsibility initiative. But what we have noticed is that businesses being narrow-minded and just driven with profitability has not really maximized what could be done in solving social change, bringing social change or creating social impact and solving global and development issues. And so we responded to the need that abound using the Profit with Purpose Africa platform. Profit with Purpose Africa is an African focus campaign to improve the knowledge about emerging global practice, methodologies, or whether they are tools to transform businesses into tools for social change, and then to be able to deconstruct the myth of social good being the exclusive reserve of philanthropies and social sector player. And so PWPA campaign, through such seminars, webinars, and other events like this, engage industry experts, investors, or CSRO practitioners, donors, private sector, or even governments in exploring social good with profits. We have taken up the challenge to unbundle and answer the question, how can we combine social good on one hand and then profits on the other hand? And that's where we will be staying tonight. And we have very seasoned experts in this sector or in this discourse to walk us through an understanding, giving us an understanding, and if possible, empower us with knowledge methodologies and tools or best practices that we can begin to meditate and think about, even as we move on or mobilize towards social change and social good. So, we would take a first speaker tonight who will be dealing with unearthing new markets potentials in impact investing. And our speaker tonight that we tackle that topic is Osai Adrian Igaro. Osai Adrian Igaro is a prominent figure in African venture capital landscape with over 2 decades of experience in strategic investment in startup. He has played an important role in shaping the continent's disruptive technology ecosystem and fostering innovation. Osai serves as the managing partner at Ripple VC and head of Africa investments at Expert Dojo, supporting the growth of startups like Aladdin Digital Bank and Bezel Money, who holds an MBA in technology entrepreneurship from Kansas State University and a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from the American University of Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Osai this evening as he walks us through unearthing new market potentials in impact investing. Osai, you are welcome.
Thank you very much, Hugo. Very kind introduction. I just wanted to correct that formally with Expert Dojo. I just wanted to correct that a little bit. But yes, thank you so much for having me today. When I was asked to speak about unearthing new market potential and impact investing, I started to think about what impact investing, what it means to people, what it is, what the type of companies that we consider as impact investing companies, and how that might change in the future, and what that might look like if we're truly serious about advancing impact investing in Africa. Excuse me, I have a bit of a cold. And the conclusion of where I arrived was, if we're really serious about impact investing in Africa, then we have to take a really hard look at science and advanced technology companies. Because at the core of research and development is this mission, this drive to target a social or environmental outcome. And that's very key when thinking about impact investing, because impact companies target social and environmental outcomes. So science and engineering companies are basically set up to innovate around this. Why are they not a massive part of the conversation? So with your permission today, I'd like to spotlight a few of the companies that I'm most excited about, and that I think would help illustrate or paint a picture in people's minds as they start to have these conversations, or at least urge them to look into these type of companies so that they can start to have these conversations. So moving forward, okay, if we move on to, okay, we had this introduction previously, angel investor in a few companies. Yeah, so I founded Ripple VC to propel Africa to the forefront of innovation by backing Africa's disruptive technology pioneers using science and advanced technology to shape the future of health, food, and climate. These 3 areas specifically, because I believe they're most important. We need good health to be around, and it helps to eat good food, to elongate our health. And the environment that we live in also needs to be conducive for this longevity that we so badly want. And so this trifecta is the core focus of Ripple VC. The first company that I would like to highlight today is Aorta Medical, which is a company out of Tanger here in Morocco that is treating congestive heart failure using a novel stent graft, the white cylinder you see in the blood vessel there, which reduces blood flow to a limb that, gets sufficient blood flow, shall we say, and redirects the blood to your kidney, because you don't want renal failure, because when renal failure starts, and I don't want to go too technical, but it releases a chemical into your bloodstream that your heart doesn't like, and that causes heart failure. And existing solutions, one of the more common existing solutions is diuretics pills, which if taken in high dosage at advanced stages can lead to rehospitalization. And that done often enough can lead to mortality. So this company is literally trying to save lives. Super excited about what they're building. The next company I'd like to talk about is Hypernova, which recently launched with SpaceX in January. So they're a space company that has repurposed their technology, pivoted to focus even more heavily on climate, and repurposed their technology to be used in the mining of rare earth elements. If you think about anything you use today, your phones, the chips, the batteries, your LEDs and devices, all of that is a large part of those materials come from rare earth elements, which current mining processes today, if you've looked into it at all, are horrible for the environment. And so what the team at Hypernova has done is created this new refining process based on a novel combination of existing plasma technology. Plasma technology is the proprietary space propulsion technology to refine metals on a large scale that produces no chemicals, no pollution, that uses only electricity. So, and this company is in South Africa. Tremendously exciting work that the team is doing. The next company I'd like to highlight is one that's pretty special. It's an American company that's moved to Africa. How often do you hear that? So Indigenous is a precision medicine company that's using NGS, next generation sequencing technologies, to identify unique gene variants in diseases that affect underrepresented populations, Africans, and by extension, Latin Americans. So two things to point out here. One, precision medicine, what's that? Precision medicine, in simple terms, is an approach to drug therapy that tailors the treatment to use specifically based on your genetic makeup. And the second point will connect to that. So drugs today, the drugs that you get in your local pharmacy, were developed using genetic makeup. 95% of the genetic makeup used to develop the drugs that you get access to in your local pharmacy is from white Caucasians, so Caucasian males, Caucasian males. And as you might imagine, they don't exactly make up 95% of the human population. So there's this ginormous gap between how effective drugs could be if they incorporated more genetic information from a wider spectrum, and where it is today. So this is where this gap is what Indigenous is looking to fill. Again, they're also another exciting company based out of Cape Town as well. And the next company, the fourth one I'd like to talk about today, is CovaDX, a company out of Ghana, relocated to the US. The founder, one of the co-founders and chief science officer is Ghanaian. He has sickle cell disease. He's also a medical doctor and has spent way too much time seeing the suffering of way too many people suffering from red blood cell diseases, including sickle cell disease. So he decided to start this company and to build this product that diagnoses and monitors the sickle cell disease patients faster, easier, and in a more affordable way. The ultimate dream with this company, ultimately, what they'd like to do is have this device in communities and clinics and hospitals across the continent of Africa, because it truly is the most affordable way to monitor and diagnose sickle cell disease patients. And I think that if you make a product that what the team is most excited about is, or one of the things the team is really excited about is, if you make a product that is easy and accessible and affordable in Africa, then that is the definition of a truly global product. Because I don't know how a product is labeled as a global product if 1.3 people can access it. Final company I'd like to talk about today is another company out of South Africa, New Form Foods, which is, I believe, the first company to first cultivated food company out of Africa. What they're doing is using cell culture, so creating beef, pork, lamb. Now, I think those are the three meats on their menu, from cells. So not from farming animals and cutting them up, but from the cells, and using a paradigm shifting bioproduction platform to cultivate this meat over a short period of time. The final thought that I'd like to leave, well, it's really an observation. These are 5 companies, that are transforming health, food, and climate on the continent and globally with global applications. Super proud to be working with these founders. Super excited about what they're building. Super excited about what the outcome could be years from now, and the type of following that these type of companies will create, hopefully. The key observation, of the $5 billion that was invested in startups in Africa in 2021 and in 2022, we're seeing 2 observations. One, a massive shift from fintech to non-fintech companies, which signals perhaps a saturation, or perhaps just not as many ginormous deals were done in fintech in 2022. But what it also signals is that all that money is yet to find science and advanced technology companies. So there's a large $5 billion gap that needs to be filled. And yes, the pipeline isn't as large as your software technology companies, but there is a pipeline. And I would urge everyone to start looking into these companies. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sai, for that insight and drawing our attention to potentials that abound in Africa. You said you're closing with 2 observations. Did you say both, or you said just one?
Yes. Yeah, no. So the 2 observations, one is the diversification, and the second is just that there's still that gap, because money hasn't moved to deep tech yet. So it just moved from fintech to non-fintech, which I guess is good in a way, because the more money going to other things is also good, but it'll be massively beneficial to us as a species if we focused more effort, funneled more capital, pushed more resources to the development and support of companies using science and advanced technology to target social and environmental outcomes.
Thank you so much. I know that we would delve more into some of the issues that you have raised during the panel discussion session. So let me allow you to take a sip of water for now as I bring up our next speaker, who will be tonight. She'll be looking at the role of donors, businesses, investors, and entrepreneurs in impact investing. She goes by the name Grace Olusi. Grace Olusi is the executive director of Creative Space Startups, a non-profit empowering undeserved youth, women, and persons with disability through creativity, technology, and entrepreneurship. She has over a decade of experience as an impact consultant and project manager and holds various certifications, including an MBA in management. Grace has supported numerous innovators and entrepreneurs, and initiated impactful programs such as Africa Finance Academy, Tech Amaka, Growth for Her, and FEMS 360 to bridge socio-economic gaps in society. Grace will be speaking to us this evening once again on the role of donors, businesses, investors, and entrepreneurs in impact investing. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Grace Olusi tonight.
Thank you. And I always feel weird when people are talking about me. Can you hear me just fine?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you. And I want to sincerely apologize that I'm not kind enough, like Mr. Osai, to turn on my camera, because I'm somewhere in Cameroon that the internet is also not very kind to me. And if I do that, we'll be in that situation of, can you hear me and can you see my screen? And I really do not like that. After 2 years or 3 years of COVID, I don't think that's fair to anyone.
Okay, well, at least we can just see your face and then you can go.
Don't worry. I think I'll turn it on at some point. I'll be checking my bandwidth and then I'll turn it up at some point.
It's all good.
And I don't know, I'm going to have a bone of contention with Sharon for putting me after Mr. Osai, because I don't know what to say after that brilliant presentation. So thank you very much for opening the floor with that, and for, sharing some of the amazing work that is happening on the continent. It's interesting to see how healthcare could be revolutionized through impact investment and the opportunities that are there. Coming to my side now, I used to be a teacher, so I like a very engaging class. So please, if you're with me, put your ones in the chat. And if you're not with me, put a 0 so that I can know who is with me and who is not with me. I speak a little bit fast, so if I talk too fast and you need me to take anything back, you can put it in the chat and then we'll fix it. Okay, thank you. So the role of businesses, investors, donors, and entrepreneurs in impact investing. I think when we talk of impact investment, a very good benchmark to look at for me as somebody who works in the developmental ecosystem is always the SDGs. And I like to look at it because I feel like it's a very comprehensive, in some ways, a very comprehensive way of how we should look at ourselves as communities and as nations to check how we are doing in terms of bettering the lives of our people and the people in the community. So currently, the SDGs was a very ambitious goal that was set up after the MDGs did not succeed, but it was more comprehensive and it looked at it from a global standpoint. And 7 years to the end of the SDGs, where's Africa today? We are at about 53.8%. And people will say that, oh, that is really fair, but it's not, because when we look at some of these European countries, they are in their 86 and whatever percent, and that is really high. And some of the worst indices is actually one, which is poverty, because 9 out of 10 extremely poor people live in Africa. And what does this tell us? This tells us that things like what innovations like what Mr. Osai was mentioning earlier are very critical to Africa, because imagine that you have no money and then you have to gamble with your healthcare because you don't know which medication is going to work. And there is a solution that could look at your genotype and everything and just precisely give you what medication you need in order to succeed. There's a UNDP report that looks at where Nigeria is, because Socio Capital is based in Nigeria, or at least that's a country of focus where I have worked with Socio Capital. I decided to highlight Nigeria. Nigeria is doing very poorly on the SDGs. And we see that in most areas, like no poverty, they're actually decreasing, which means more people are becoming poor. Zero hunger is stagnant, which means there are major challenges there and they are not providing food to more people. Good health, and I like that Mr. Osari pointed out a lot of startups that were either in food or health. Healthcare is really terrible. And you look at that line, the only part where Nigeria is doing well or seems to be moderately increasing is, I think, climate change, that's SDG 13, and 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. And I mean, we can all agree because of the amazing innovations that have come out from Nigeria in the last few years. That said, there's still a lot that's left to be done. If this presentation is shared after, there's the report there that you can really read to see where Nigeria is as a country and where we are globally. So a lot of donors, the first thing we want to explore is donations that come into Africa. And we see that around the 1960s or thereabout, when a lot of African countries were asking for independence, and, you know, it's a dramatic period in our history, global donations were totaling about $38 billion. And today we are at about 204 billion as of 2022. And the estimated percentage is about 33.6% of this monies come to Africa. At least that's the data from 2021. But is this money enough? Because I mean, somebody could look at 204 billion and think that it's a lot of money. But quite frankly, it is not a lot of money, because we estimate that every year, the amount of money that we need to achieve the SDGs and even to develop ourselves is about 3 trillion per year. This is not cumulatively to 2030. This is per year. It's going to cost between 1.4 trillion and 3 trillion. And we are currently only at 204 billion. You see that there is a huge gap. I was hoping that Madam Etemo was going to be here to define impact investment, so I did not put it in my slides. But I think that everybody kind of has a sense of where impact investments, of what impact investments means, and how donations can play a key role in that. Because donations have no expectations, then, you know, and as such, businesses and innovators and development workers are under no pressure to necessarily deliver to investors, but rather they can take their time and actually nurture solutions and innovations that can actually impact the lives of people in our community. So we go a bit further and we look at what more can donors do, given that there is this significant gap. I like to say it everywhere that you people need to give us more money. The Socio Capitals who do amazing work, the creative space startups that do amazing work, Ripple investments that do amazing work, funding innovations that I think it's Ripple VC, if I said that correctly, that do amazing work that really go to change the lives of millions and if not billions of Africans. Those are the people who need more money. I think there needs to be more demand on accountability in terms of the people to whom they give the money to. Find the right partners, because I mean, there's a recent scenario, and I don't know if anybody is following the news, but we saw the vice president of Equatorial Guinea, who went and stayed in a lavish hotel that probably cost 200,000 or so, in a penthouse actually, it cost like 200 and so thousand dollars per week or per whatever, to go and beg for donations for his country. So clearly, any donor that gives even $1,000 to the vice president of Equatorial Guinea to help the people in Guinea, you know that you have made a bad investment. So find the right partners. Do the hard work of finding people who really do the work, not the people with the best publicity, not the people because they're in government or whatever. You have to find the right partners. And I think that that calls for a lot of engagement and co-creation with local actors and communities to ensure that the investment is going to the areas of real need. This is what more we can expect from donors. From the business perspective, and I like when I saw this post, if you can see that I cropped something from the Profit with Purpose Instagram, or I think LinkedIn post, and put here in terms of what businesses can do. I think it's very simple: people over profits. We live in a very, I don't know what to say, the word is, in a very evil, I think evil is a good word to use, in a very evil world, which has become very tainted, where people feel like money is the only thing they have to get. So every other week in Nigeria, we see news reports of cough syrups that are poisonous to children. We see reports of water or whatever products that NAFDAC has missed, or whichever regulatory agency has missed. We are currently even seeing the challenge of pesticides in Nigeria, where the pesticides that they're using for crops are basically poisoning people. And we had an incident not too far back where almost 100 people died from eating crops that had just, pesticides had just been sprayed on. And that is because the people who make these products do not think of the people. They just think about what's the fastest way that we can make profits. So every businessman in this room, and you that you know any business person, we have to pick people over profits, because if you think about it, technically, the people give you the profits. Therefore, if you put the people at the center of it, how much more profitable would you become? And it doesn't just end as profit, as you see on this slide here. As a company and the organization, you make the profits and you ensure that these profits at the end of the day are going to the people. And I think there needs to be a green arrow that shows that the people who do these societal and environmental benefits also feed back into your profits. Investors, and I mean, Mr. Osayi had shown us some amazing work that is already being done on the continent, and the people who are investing in those innovations, I mean, we need to applaud for them, because it takes a lot of risk and a lot of guts to believe in innovations like that, especially in a continent like this. And according to UNDP, a UNDP report on impact investing, there's actually the need for impact investment. Africa needs, I think, about 100 million, or it's 100 billion dollars every year that needs to go into impact investments to support innovations in healthcare, in food, in agriculture, food security, innovations that are actually sustainable, businesses that are actually sustainable and impact driven, that can help solve major problems in Africa. It's estimated that we need about $100 billion in that impact investment every year. But currently, only about 8 billion gets into the continent. And which means that there's a huge shortfall of about 92%, which shows you the way, how much of a road that we have to go. And I'm really, really missing Madam Etomo for this, because I know she works in impact investment, and it would have been really interesting to see her point of view. And I hope that we can do this some other time, Sharon, and get her perspective on some of this. So what is it that impact investors, what is the role of impact investors? One, impact investors come with a lot of patience. So unlike a typical investor that is looking at your bottom line and wanting you to say, we can hit 1 million users and 1 million subscribers paying $2 every month, and therefore we'll be making $2 billion every month, and the profit is 30%, and therefore you can make dividends of X percent. I will not go into the math. And you can make dividends of X% and you can exit in 3 years and you cash out with about $300 million and all of that. Impact investors come to look for the humanity in the business. Yes, you're going to be hitting 1 million subscribers, so what? Yes, you're going to be hitting, selling at $2, so what? So what this tells us is impact investors are looking for the stories of hope in the businesses. They are looking, I mean, that's what they should be looking for. And I hope that that is what they are looking for, are looking at the fact that this precision health treatment solution can actually help solve the problems of 1 million Africans. I like the last example that Mr. Osayi shared about sickle cell, because I mean, we know that about 98%, if I'm not mistaken in my statistics, of people with the sickle cell genotype are actually in Africa. And I think 50 to 60% of those people are in West Africa. We have the highest majority of that. And because a lot of medications had been created using Caucasians, which is why the sickle cell treats disease or sickness is something that is still very prominent in our continent. We still have a lot of people who die from it. So imagine impact investors looking at a solution like that and seeing the humanity in it and seeing the hope that it gives to millions of Africans with the sickle cell disease, and being patient enough to say, even if it takes you 3 years, even if it takes you 5 years to get it right, we're going to be patient with you, and we're going to sit with you to give you the resources and the guidance that you need to ensure that you get it right. Because when you do get it right, that is the lives of millions of Africans that you're changing. It also means having faith that these things will work. I'm sorry, I come from a very emotional point of view from this point of view, because I think that impact investment is not always about what the numbers say. It's also about a lot of guts and a lot of faith and a lot of belief that what you're doing matters to the communities that you want to serve. So where do entrepreneurs come in? I mean, from the first presentation, we've already seen where entrepreneurs come in. And as people on this continent that are greatly driven by pain, I think Africa is the most pain-driven. We have the most pain-driven innovators in the world than any other continent, maybe us and Asia, if we're thinking about it. Sorry, there's a typo there. And what this means is a lot of us innovate because of the lack of things. A lot of us innovate because we couldn't find our way out of one solution or the other. Anytime you listen to an entrepreneur out of Africa, they'll tell you most often their stories is not from a place of, I just wanted to do something cool, or I sat with my friends and I thought, what if we do this? No, it's always going to be from a place of, I wanted to get something and I couldn't get it. And it was impossible for me to get it. I wanted to send my daughter to the hospital really quickly, and I could not get to the hospital really quickly because there were no ambulances. So I decided to create an app that does this. I had somebody die from sickle cell, and I had to do this. Like, all of this would come from a place of pain, which also means that sometimes we as entrepreneurs, we focus so much on the pain that we forget the business in the pain. And if you look at the UNDP report, they said some of the challenges that occur in impact investment is the poor linkages between sustainable social enterprises, entrepreneurs, investors, and innovation networks, which means that sometimes the innovators who are doing impact work do not get to find the support organizations, like the social capitals that they need to get in touch with, or even like the investors that they need to get in touch with who will understand their business model. They end up finding themselves in bed with regular investors who put them under pressure, and then they lose the entire goal of what they were trying to do. We look at the fact that there's poor and inconsistent impact measurement practice. And what this means is that you're an impact entrepreneur, you're a sustainable entrepreneur, you want to solve a problem, but you're not measuring what you're trying to do. There's inconsistency. This year, you're going to produce a report. Next year, you're not going to produce it. You're not even measuring it adequately. I see this a lot in some of the entrepreneurs that I work with, where they don't have the data of what they're trying to do, or even how far they have come. And if you do not have that, then how is an investor supposed to look at your books or look at your organization and say that you are worth $1 million? We have poor visibility and credibility of sustainable social enterprises. Myself, I'm guilty of this. Most of us who do really amazing work, we feel like, oh, the work should speak for itself. I really do not like publicity. And I'm sorry, for lack of a better word, that's just nonsense. You have to be visible enough. You have to put the work in building your credibility, in building your visibility, so people see the amazing work that you do and can give you money. I was just mentioning earlier about the vice president of I was just talking earlier about the vice president of Equatorial Guinea. How did we even know that he booked himself a hotel that was almost $240,000? It's because he posted it on his Instagram. And mind you, the vice president is the son of the president. Again, that's another story for a political class that we may have after. But he's posting it, he's giving himself visibility while going to beg for money. So why would you on this call that is doing really amazing work that could change the life of millions of Africans not work on your visibility and building your credibility? And also the last challenge that we realized was that there's a limited number of sustainable social enterprises or impact investees able to demonstrate a sufficient track record and capacity. I know that the journey of entrepreneurship is really hard. I'm an entrepreneur and I highly do not recommend it. I always tell everybody, go and find a job. Entrepreneurship is not for everybody. Like, if I could choose another path in my life, I would choose getting a job and receiving a salary at the end of every month. But if you decide to do it, then you have to make sure that you stick the course. The fact that there are a limited number, I do not necessarily think that there are a limited number of amazing entrepreneurs on this continent doing amazing work to solve key problems in Africa. I think that the major challenge is that these people are not coming to the forefront, or we give up too easily. Or because it gets too hard, we give up. Because it gets too hard, we change the course or whatever. And I'm not saying don't pivot. I'm just saying that sometimes stick the course, work on your visibility, work on your credibility, and be consistent in your measurement and find the networks that you're supposed to be part of. Because at the end of the day, the donations should come to you. The investments should come to you. And businesses, even those that are not impact driven, should seek you out to work with you because they know that at the end of the day, you're doing things that are changing the course of the lives of people on this continent. So that said, I think I've said a lot of this in the previous slide already. Get into the ring, my people. Fight your heart out to ensure that you are in the game and that we can quickly close that $100 billion gap, and that we can quickly close that margin of where we are as a continent in terms of achieving the goals. And lastly, what I would like to say is the role of all of these people is collaboration. We have to continuously seek each other out, work with each other to see that we are solving the problems of this continent. That's really where it is, my people. And that really is where I think what's that thing that they say in African proverb? I think that's where the taste of the pudding is, or whatever it is. It's in us collaborating, it's in us supporting each other to ensure that these amazing innovations get to solve the biggest problems on this continent. All of us want to live in a continent that is poverty-free and where we have food and where we have light and where we have good water running from our taps. We all want to do that, and where we have good healthcare. So that's where it is. Let's collaborate, let's support each other. And thank you so much for your time and for listening.
Thank you so much, Grace. My notes are filled with thoughts, provoking thoughts from you. I wouldn't just want to go into them because of our time. I would like for us to just jump in right into the panel discussion questions. In fact, you ended with collaboration, and that's one of the questions that is just jumping at me right here. But I'll ask two questions, and maybe you respond first, and then Osai would also come in to do that. So the first question would be, you spoke about the gap in financing. So how can impact investing play a role in financing and promoting within and outside Africa trade? And then also you want to elaborate on the collaborative efforts and key stakeholder engagement involved in leveraging private capital for social impact in Africa. I'm not sure. I hope the question is clear. There are two in one because of time, but you could jump into that, and then Osai would also speak to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll speak to it, but I'm going to say you're unfair. You gave Mr. Osai time to drink water. You didn't give me time to drink water, but it's all right. I'll take it. Okay. So in terms of what is the role of impact investors, I think one, beyond even the money that is coming, beyond writing checks, is creating those collaborations for exchange of skill and talents. And I mean, like Mr. Osai was sharing about the company that is living, I think, Ghana to the US or vice versa. it's in those collaborations and in those connections to ensure that at the end of the day, the startups in Africa are receiving the resources that they need, even if it's in the trade of skill or whatever. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. And also it's in opening those parts. I mean, there's no challenge in out of Africa trade, but within Africa trade is where we have a major challenge. So it will be in them, because maybe they'll have access to some of the policy makers, because they'll have access to some of these places where these innovators can reach, will be in facilitating and brokering these deals within countries where there is need for transfer to happen, and ensuring that it happens to the success of the innovators, and again the impact that they are meant to create. And in terms of cross stakeholder collaboration, I mean, we've said it there. They're the innovators who I think are really pivotal in all these conversations that we're having. And then there are the investors themselves. We need to come with really big checkbooks. And Mr. Osai, I heard that you worked in a VC firm. I hope that your checkbook is as big as it comes. Yeah, we'd have to come with really big checkbooks. And then there are the social capitals and the creative spaces who are entrepreneurship enablers, who have to ensure that all those gaps that I mentioned in my presentation are being closed, so that the innovators are there to receive this money. Because sometimes there's a lot of money to be given, but there are no innovators to receive it. I think that sometimes too, that's the problem, even though I think the investors are not looking hard enough, but that also could be a potential problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace. You could take water, take tea actually, not just water now. Mr. Osai, it's a party.
I'm enjoying this. Lots of wisdom in Grace's presentation. Thank you for that. So the first question you asked about how can impact investing play a role in financing and promoting intra-African and extra-African trade? I think it already does. On a small scale, perhaps. Can it do more? Absolutely. And by it, I mean impact investing. More investment funding into more great opportunities produces more success stories and returns that unlock even more investing funding. Rinse, repeat, right? It's a cycle. For example, Newform Foods and Indigenous both have customers or pipeline customers in South Africa. They raised some capital, made progress on technology development, are building quite an attractive pipeline of customers in the UK and in the States right now. As more large companies, the large corporations in Africa adopt the ESG framework, take SDG goals more seriously, I think we will see more partnerships with social ventures, more investments in social ventures, more acquisitions of social ventures. And by social ventures, I mean startups that are targeting social or environmental outcomes. All of this, I think, will help paint a larger, clearer picture of the role of impact investing in this context. With regard to the second question, collaborative efforts and key stakeholder engagements involved in leveraging private capital for social impact in Africa. This cycle of investing in companies, adding value to companies, exiting companies over and over again requires an ecosystem of players, that Grace mentioned a number of times. Creative spaces, social capital, and other players in the ecosystem. So, it requires an ecosystem of players that includes the companies, right? Obviously, corporate partners, research universities, which massively underlooked for some reason, R&D incubators. Also, I don't think I heard many people talk about that. Investors, of course, and others. Try not to rely on governments too much. Perhaps the most influential of these stakeholders are impact-focused investors and corporate partners. I find it particularly exciting when one entity plays both of these roles. For example, I was recently connected with the CVC leadership, CVC Corporate Venture Capital leadership of a German filtration company that is exploring ways to deepen their ties with Africa and immerse themselves in the African startup ecosystem. An initiative like that would mean wins all around. For African companies, it will mean new capital to target the desired outcomes, market expansion opportunities through corporate partnership, access to German engineering, which is never a bad thing, validation that comes with having a company of that caliber on the cap table, and so on. For the corporation, early relationship with an emerging group of entrepreneurs. Right now, only 8% of companies are only getting 8% of impact investment dollars is only reaching 8% of companies, which isn't good. So early relationship with an emerging group of entrepreneurs, a cost-effective access to co-developing new applications of existing products or existing technologies, or co-developing entirely new products. That would be cool to be for large corporations outside of Africa to do that with African companies. It would also be a rewarding, impactful way to achieve their CSR and ESG goals, and so on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that lights again. Grace, I hope your tea is, because I'm about to throw the next question to you now. One of the attention you draw attention to impact measurement practice, which is not adequate. So I'm going to take you on that. So we want to ask, what metrics or indicators do you consider most valuable in measuring the success and impact of an impact investing initiative? Please, if you could do that, we would appreciate.
So, I mean, this question could be answered differently if you speak to an investor, or you speak to the startup in itself, or you speak to somebody in finance. But as somebody who works on the ground with communities and with entrepreneurs, for me, it's always we always shout about this thing in meetings. It's a product of outcome versus outputs. Like, meeting a healthcare company serving or saying that they have 1 million subscribers is just outputs rather. But then the outcome is really now in seeing that these people have been able to be treated or have gotten better through this solutions or because of this investment. That's how we really want to look at it. There's one index, or there's one, I think that's the index, there's one indicator that I look at, which is better communities. Can we absolutely, without any shred of a doubt, beyond reasonable doubt, like we're in a court of law, say that this community or these people or this continent has become better because of this investment? And if we're doing that, how do we measure it? Because then it becomes really political and then really, emotional, and then people fight, oh no, it doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter. But it does matter, it doesn't matter. But then at the end of the day, so for example, we'll look at jobs created, and not just any type of jobs. We'll look at decent jobs that have been created as a result of that investment. So I presume that in one of these companies that is doing something in this really amazing health sector, they would have employed nothing more less than 50 plus people. So that's really impact that we can measure because of that investment. And then now we go to the second layer, which is the number of people who actually get treated as a result of this investment because this innovation works. And then we can clearly see that healthcare is better. And I mean, sometimes we think that the things that we do in small buckets do not matter, but at the end of the day, it matters. So if you write a check of $100,000 now, Mr. Asai, somebody's going to think that that's nothing, but it adds up at the end of the day. because the $100,000 employs 10 people, and these 10 people are able to serve 1,000 people. So that's how I'm going to look at it. For me, it's always going to be about the people whose lives have been changed and who have been impacted as a result of that investment. Thank you.
Yeah,
Mr.
absolutely.
Yes, go ahead.
I wanted to add also, really sorry that Tomo is unable to join us today because no one does key stakeholder engagements better than her team at the Impact Investors Foundation. So I was really excited to get her input on that. So metrics or indicators do you consider most valuable in measuring the success and impact of an impact invest initiative? It depends. It depends on the nature of the business. Depends on the target outcome, social, environmental. For example, so for a cultivated food company like New Form Foods, it will be interesting to see for the volume of meat produced over a defined period, right? How much fertilizer would have been used and how much CO2 would have been released into the environment using traditional methods of just like chopping up or rearing cattle and pigs and sheep and and all of that goes into it versus from stem cells, from cells. So that would be an interesting thing to measure. For a company like Aorta Medical, their solution it's significantly less expensive than competing solutions. So there is an economic value that can be easily measured. It's also arguably more effective and convenient for the end user. But I think what is most important to the founders, and I think generally speaking, is the potential number of lives that will be saved with your product. So, I mean, it really depends, and every company is different. For COVA-DX, it'd be a different thing. For Indigenous, it'd be a different thing. But it's really centered around the target outcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Osai. Thank you so much. My next question would be, what successful strategies have you observed and implemented in unlocking scalable impacts? Like you rightly mentioned, if Etamor was here, he would have spoken to this, but at least we have you and Grace. So what successful strategies have you observed or implemented in unlocking scalable impact, especially in the context of Africa markets? Any of you could take on that.
Okay, I could jump in. In the context of African markets, because outside, I think Grace mentioned something like this earlier. Outside, when you're looking at outside at the African market, that's a lot more obvious. It's corporate partnerships. Within Africa, because of the nascency of the space, how nascent things are right now, it's a lot more challenging. But what I am seeing, though, from the companies that I'm looking at is keeping research and development in Africa, keeping it within Africa. So even when you get your HQ and move to UK or to the States, you keep R&D in Africa. And they're doing that because it gives the companies access to data in a way that is direct, inexpensive, and fast, right? And this data fuels the research and development of the technology that is used to target the desired outcome. And this presents an incredible advantage over competing companies outside Africa who are also targeting the African market. So that's I think the biggest thing that I've seen among companies.
Thank you so much. Grace, you want to contribute to that, or?
I think I wouldn't have put it better myself, so I'm going to let us go to the next question. Thank you, Mr. Osai.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sai. Thank you for that counsel of keeping R&D in Africa because of the data, so that we're able to compete with the companies that are outside Africa. The last question here is, what advice would you give to organizations or individuals looking to integrate impact investing into their business model or philanthropic initiative, as the case may be? What advice would you give?
I'll let Grace go first.
Okay. What advice would I give is, first thing, I really don't think that this is a tough question, to be honest. If you exist in a continent like Africa, the only thing you need to do is turn around you, and I can promise you, anybody where you are, as long as you're on the continent, if you look around you, you'll find like 5 problems that you have to fix. That's just the God's honest truth. I've been in Douala now for close to 3 weeks doing work, and I cannot tell you how frustrated I have become by just things that should be so basic, yet it's seeming like rocket science. And you ask yourself, but why is this? So I don't even think that there should be a business operating on this beautiful continent that is not impact driven, that is not people driven, that is not sustainable driven. That's just the God's honest truth. Because what else are you going to do? And we see companies do this in the most, I don't want to say stupid way, but it's a way. So you see the sachet economy. It happens mostly in Africa because of poverty, where everything that Unilever makes and everything that Nestle makes, they want to put it in a sachet for 10 naira, for 50 francs, for 50 franc Congo, and whatever you have, because they know that the people are poor. In some way, they'll tell you that they're trying to get this good product to many people, but then we see the problems that plastic pollution causes on the continent. And they do these products. I'm so sorry if I'm discrediting anybody's company now, and I hope that they are not sponsoring this session. If not, you are really wonderful people, and I take it back. Please edit this and delete it if they are the sponsors of this. Sorry, going back to my conversation. I'm so sorry. But yes, and they do this, and they do it in plastics that are non-recyclable, which means it's going to end up in one place. It's going to end up in the ocean. It's going to end up in my mom's farm. It's going to end up in my mom's fish farm. It's going to cause so much harm to the population at the end of the day. So one, I think that every business, every organization that exists on this continent needs to be people focused. And once you're people focused on this particular continent that is full with so much problems, you would find a way to be impact driven. That's the first thing. Put people at the center of it. That beautiful diagram that you guys published on LinkedIn a few days ago, that's it. That diagram is gospel. Don't end at the profits. Put people at the center of it, and that's the goal. The difference now would just be in the branding, where some people will actually describe themselves as impact driven and others wouldn't, because their main goal is for profit and because of the nature of their organizations. But put people at the center of it, because, I mean, if not, then what are we really doing? Look at the statistics. Look at where we are as a continent. It's getting worse every day. So why would you exist on this particular continent and make profits without putting people at the center? Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, just to add to that, I think in the second question where we talked about stakeholders, and I mentioned perhaps the most influential are impact-focused investors and corporate partners. This is exactly it. I think every large corporation on the continent should definitely be focused on impact, either through working with startups or investing in startups directly, or backing funds that invest in startups. Just every company, honestly, if you're not dealing with an impact in some way, what are you doing? So anyways, going back to this, what advice would I give to organizations or individuals looking to integrate impact investing into their business models or philanthropic initiatives? First, congrats. Good on you for considering it at all. Welcome to the evolved to evolved human species. Second, learn, reach out to ecosystem players and have conversations that strengthen your knowledge, right, of the landscape, so you can identify opportunities that are most aligned with your mission. Grace, talked about just looking around and you see a bunch of different opportunities. Look around, speak to people, identify those that are most aligned with your company's mission, and go hard. The good folks at Social Capital will be a great place to start. I'm sure Grace would be happy to have that conversation with these organizations or individuals, as would I. Third piece of advice: jump in, just do something. The water is deliciously warm, so come on in.
Thank you so much. The water is deliciously warm. And we want to thank both of you for doing justice to this topic and also to answering our questions from the companies that you presented that are doing amazing work in science and advanced technology coming out of South Africa and Ghana. I wonder why you didn't put a case study from Nigeria, but it's okay. I'm sure you do that the next time. And also to what Grace told us as not doing too well with the SDG and then the gap in impact investing funds, and then of course the encouragement to look at linkaging networks, doing well in impact measurement practice, and then of course the closing the poor visibility gap, showing people what we are doing, and ensuring that the funds are coming in our direction instead of going elsewhere, and a lot of the other things that were spoken this evening. We truly appreciate the time that you have spent together this evening. Please, for those who participated this evening, we want to thank you, and we want to say that if you are still here till this time, you're a legend. We want to say, help us put your questions, your comments in our social media platforms, which are easy to find: Social Capital. Your questions, your thoughts are good for our next episode. And to quickly also say that we'll follow up this with our monthly newsletter, and the On Purpose series will continue. It happens, intermittently. Our social media post platforms are also there where key issues about development in Africa are being addressed. And so we'll keep you updated in all of these conversations that are ongoing. I want to say a very big thank you again to our speaker, Mr. Osai and Grace Oluchi. It's been an amazing time having you here. Thank you so much, my colleagues. Thank you so much, Social Capital. I know I'm part of Social Capital, but I'm thanking you for putting this together and for having this conversation. This is where we might be drawing up the curtain. Do we want to take just a last word, a final word from both of our speakers before we shut the curtain? Any final words?
Thank you. I just wanted to tell Social Capital, I love it. I love the Profit with Purpose Africa. I saw it. I was in love with it. Call me anytime. Always happy to support this. And I look forward to what we could do in transforming this beautiful continent of ours. And Mr. Osai, it was a pleasure sharing the virtual stage with you and learning from you as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Exact same. Thank you so much, Social Capital, for putting this together. I know this is the first episode of the On Purpose series, and I'm really excited to see where this goes. Really enjoyed being on the panel with you, Grace, today, and learning so much from your presentation. And yeah, we're really looking forward to the next episode of this.
Thank you so much. We will not fail to get you back on, because people will need to understand what you are really talking about more, and they will need to be equipped with the tools, the models, and the methodology to jump into the delicious warm water, as you rightly said. So good evening and have a fantastic evening. From all of us at Social Capital, we say stay blessed.
Thank you. Good evening.
Katika majani kuna kini